A local nonprofit organization mission is to reduce the incidence of sexual violence and domestic and family violence, as well as to promote safety and a higher quality of life through shelter services, supportive programming, counseling, advocacy, education, and outreach in Polk, Hardy, and Highlands counties. Their story is coming up next on Polk Place. Welcome to Polk Place. I'm your host, Lauren Lingell. Joining me in studio, we have Linda Parker. She's the Director of Victim Services at Peace River Center. Welcome, Linda.
Thank you very much.
It's so nice to have you here to talk about kind of one of those topics that's not a lot of fun to talk about, but it's one that's very important that we talk about.
Absolutely.
So tell me a little bit about how you got into domestic violence.
So I have a personal connection to domestic violence. My mother was in a domestic violence relationship when I was younger, and that led me to stay in a domestic violence shelter for a period of time. And I remember feeling very frustrated and not really respected in the shelter. Mm-hmm. And so I think that stuck with me as a kid. And as I started to go back through college, I got involved in domestic violence among some other non-for-profit work, and I really liked the idea of being able to help folks get back on the track for something that was beyond their control. And so that's how I ended up here at Peace River.
Well, I'm sure they are very lucky to have you. I know in talking with you, I feel like it's really easy for you to work with people, and I can really see how you're making a difference,
Thanks.
Based on those things. So before we get into the services offered, let's talk a little bit about domestic violence and maybe kind of define that for people, because I know that most people kind of think about it as a husband like smacking a wife around,
Yeah.
But there's a lot more to it than that.
There is, and domestic violence happens in a variety of ways, in a variety of different layers. So for instance, there is what we probably know as the physical violence between a husband and wife, but it also happens between wives to husbands. It happens in the LGBT community. It happens from immigrant survivors. There really isn't anyone that isn't touched by some level of domestic violence. And it's not necessarily physical. It could be something as simple as and not simple, but something like financially controlling the finances.
Sure.
We've had instances where people have never worked because the finances have been taken care of them, and then that's a way of controlling how someone can go. If you have no money, you have nowhere to go to. So those are some of the things we see also. We see a lot of psychological abuse, which is sometimes harder to deal with because it's so ingrained in your brain, and to try to get that fixed,
Right.
And takes a lot of healing.
Of course. I mean, if someone's constantly telling you either you're nothing or something's your fault, and that's all you ever hear, and you don't have any friends or family outside of this other person, you're going to be like, oh, well, he must know.
Right, exactly.
Or she must know.
And that's a pretty common separating you from your family and friends, because it's a lot more difficult to control someone if they have an outside person talking to you saying this probably isn't normal behavior for someone.
And I know we were kind of talking a little bit before the show, but the LGBT community, that is not something that either we hear about much or that anyone has really any awareness that goes on.
Well, and I think part of that belongs to the fact that they really are an oppressed group, and so oppressed groups really are very self-contained, in that they don't feel safe going to. They're not sure who's going to believe them, or what the repercussions will be about coming forward, and in some ways they probably feel stigmatized a little bit anyway. So we just try the best we can to meet the survivor where they're at. So we allow for everyone to come. There's no one person we won't help, no matter where they're at in their cycle.
Now also, there's another component that goes along with domestic violence, and it's usually something that's either it's already present or it's not far away. And intimate partner violence is, can you speak to that a
Yeah,
little?
we see that quite a bit. And actually we have one program that is very much structured just around intimate partner violence and violence specifically that's heading in a lethal direction. We've seen an increase in Polk County recently, a lot of strangulation. Those are usually an indicator to us that the violence is going to escalate very rapidly. And so that program is designed strictly for intimate partners and trying to hold the perpetrator accountable for their actions as opposed to re-victimizing the victim by doing things such as removing the children, things like that.
And I used a term that I know you understand, intimate partner violence, but what is the layperson's terms? That I feel like that's kind of an
So
industry
anyone
term.
who lives together, that lives in some type of intimate setting. So for instance, could be boyfriend, girlfriend, could be girlfriend, girlfriend, could be boyfriend, boyfriend, could be husband, wife, anyone who's in an intimate type of relationship.
Okay. So you got all that going on. You know, that's a lot.
It is a lot.
Especially if it's happening to one person or one family. And then we think about what happens when children are involved in all of that.
Right.
And that's just...
It's very tough. And, you know, when you think about the kids and how that affects them, you know, we have a lot of partners in the community we work with children, but I think part of it is you're trying to break a cycle that can actually go on for generations. You know, my mother was in a domestic violence relationship, and for a period of time, so was I. So, and I knew better. So it's not about making judgments on folks, but it is about giving people the tools to understand that this could be something that continues, and you don't want your children to be hurt, and you don't want your children to be later on in the same situation you were in. So we work really hard to try to address those issues early on.
So when a person is like, okay, this is a relationship that's gotten out of whack, whether it's spouses, boyfriend, girlfriend, 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 boyfriend, boyfriend, whatever, or even in some cases like an elderly person and maybe a child or somebody, an adult child. So they're like, this is not good. So what do they do?
So there's a few ways they can reach out to us. We have a 24-hour hotline, and each county, we actually cover 3 counties. Both counties have, or all 3 counties have a hotline that they can call. We also accept walk-ins to the administration building. And basically what we do is we kind of assess where they're at in process and what it is that, how we can help them. Because not everyone wants to go to the domestic violence shelter. Not everyone needs financial support, but our experiences are that you need something, whether we can provide you counseling, we can give you services, we can tell you what's available for you to give you help. I think a lot of people feel so lost because they just don't know what services are available.
I mean, especially someone who's been kept out of the loop of their finances.
Absolutely.
And don't really have anything that they feel is their own.
That's very true.
And I've heard a lot of times that when people are, you know, leaving or reaching out for help, they sometimes don't have time to take anything else with them. When
someone's leaving is actually the most dangerous time for something really tragic to happen. So we tell folks that they really should work on trying to have a bag available, and you know, without going into too much detail, just because I don't want to share too much, but so we tell them kind of what they need to do, and we talk them through that process, and if necessary, we'll send the police out to make sure that they can get out of their home, because it is very dangerous.
Right. Very critical time also. And I'm going to bust a myth that some people don't understand, that there are domestic violence shelters that you guys have. Of course, they're undisclosed because we want to keep everyone safe, but that doesn't necessarily mean everybody from Polk, Hardy, and Highlands County comes to a shelter here in this county.
Correct. We actually have sister shelters that we work with. Unfortunately, the Lakeland shelter is often full because we have a pretty large need in Polk County. But we have relationships with all shelters, and in fact, if we feel like a situation for a survivor is not safe here in Polk County or in Highlands County where other shelter is offered, we'll call a sister shelter and say, I really think we need to take this person out of county and give them some additional help.
So if someone doesn't necessarily have a domestic violence situation, but perhaps they have had an unfortunate sexual assault or something of that nature.
We also do have a sexual assault center. We have a forensic exam room in my office, so that for those folks who do not want to go to the hospital after 6 o'clock, they can come to the office, and we have a sane trained nurse that will come out. The police will stay in my office. We have a place to change clothes and shower. So it would be like going to a doctor's office without the kind of the chaos you feel of a hospital. Hospitals are great for sexual assault because they always have a sane trained nurse, but in a crisis situation, sometimes folks feel overwhelmed, and in the evening, if they would like to come in, they can come into a more quiet, and no one's there, like my staff is gone for the day. So. And
the 24-hour crisis line, is that the same for both domestic violence and rape crisis?
It's actually a different number, but it is 24 hours.
Okay. And everything's free and confidential?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So
we don't charge for any services.
So there's really, as far as cost or worrying that you're going to share someone's information, there's no need to be concerned there.
No, absolutely not. Okay. We have domestic violence and sexual violence advocates have a level of privilege and confidentiality legally we have to uphold. So it's similar to like a privilege that a lawyer would have between a client. So there's certain things we can't disclose if it has nothing to do with the safety, and they're just telling us things, we can't disclose that information.
So if you're subpoenaed by a judge, even in a court of law,
yeah,
you do not have to disclose
Correct.
that.
Correct.
So that's an excellent level of security and a wonderful thing when you're in a terrible situation and you just want somebody to be able to trust. So.
Exactly, and it's a safety concern.
Sure.
You know, Polk County seems very large, but it's not as large as you think, and sometimes you have to be careful because you don't want someone to find out information about a survivor or participant.
So if you could just kind of briefly recount your services, because I want to make sure everybody knows what all you all offer, because we're running out of time.
No worries. So we have counseling services that we provide. We also provide services for things like diapers, and we'll try to help you find financials to help pay bills in the interim. We do provide the shelter. We have several services that work on things like credit counseling, so we'll help you figure out how to get your credit back on track. We have other services for folks that are highly faulty and that we need to do some further things. The FCADV, which is the Florida Coalition Against Domestic Violence, helps us by providing 2 attorneys free of charge for all injunctions. So if you go to the courthouse, there's someone there, there's an advocate there that can help you and then direct you to a lawyer that will help you get things working. We have lawyers that work with us on immigration. We have lawyers that work with us on divorce. I'm continually impressed at the number of resources that we're able to provide and that folks are able to get in Polk County.
I love that. I love hearing that if something bad happens to you, it's okay, because there are other people that are gonna, kind of wrap their arms around you and help you get to where you need to be.
Absolutely.
So, thank you so much for everything that you do.
Thank you so much for having me.
Established in 1978, Peace River Center Victim Services, their vision is to educate and promote safety within the community through creating a positive force of social change with zero tolerance towards domestic and sexual violence in Polk, Highlands, and Hardy counties. They are certified by the Florida Coalition Against Domestic Violence and Florida Council Against Sexual Violence. Their 24-hour domestic violence and sexual assault lines services are free. For more information, you can look them up on Facebook at PRC Victim Services or give them a call at 863-413-2708.